For more on this, I'm joined by the Democratic Congressman Krishnamoorthi of Illinois, who's a member of the House Oversight Committee, and Jim Acosta, an independent journalist who spent decades covering news in Washington, including a chief White House correspondent. He's now the host of the Jim Acosta Web Show. Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining us. Congressman, let me start with you. Donald Trump has tried everything in the world to get away from the Epstein situation. I have to say it's not working. It's mostly not working with his own base and his own party. But carrying on about windmills and being in Scotland for a golf course is not going to make this problem go away, even though Mike Johnson's made Congress go away.
Well, that's right. You know, the Oversight Committee successfully issued 2 subpoenas, one for the fully unredacted files, of course, protecting victims and, trying to keep child pornography out of the public domain. The second subpoena actually is for Ghislaine Maxwell to sit for a deposition with the Oversight Committee. And so this is, for the first time, at least in my decade in Congress, there's been a bipartisan subpoena from the Oversight Committee. And this is this is extraordinary. And if it gets carried out, we're going to learn a lot more.
Jim, let's talk about this. Donald Trump, let's talk about the trade thing for a second. You'll remember when they started this trade stuff with Liberation Day, Donald Trump said to Time magazine that he's made 200 deals. Those are his words, not making, not aiming to make, made 200 deals. The UN recognizes 193 countries, so that in itself will be quite an amazing achievement if he made 200 deals. But he hasn't made 5 deals at the moment.
Yeah. And not even one with the country with the penguins, I think. Wasn't that one of the countries? Yeah, I mean, I think the markets, I think, foreign heads of state, countries around the world, U.S. allies, have all sort of, I think, processed the idea of the taco trade, that Donald Trump, speaks with a lot of bluster at first. He makes a lot of threats. He says, I'm going to raise tariffs 200% and so on. And then he doesn't actually follow through and do it. And so, I think at this point, I've talked to a lot of diplomatic officials in recent weeks. I was out in Colorado at the Aspen Security Forum. And yes, they're all very concerned about the kind of damage that Trump can do to the world economy. But at this point, they're sort of taking a wait and see approach. They know that he's going to talk tough and then usually back down, and that a lot of this is done for domestic political purposes. It's pretty performative, they think.
Congressman, in addition to the country-specific tariffs that are going to take place on August 1st, if, of course, Donald Trump doesn't once again, delay them or whatever the case is, the White House is also planning to impose a new tariff on imported pharmaceutical products. Now, the majority of drugs that Americans take come from outside the United States, including some of our most important drugs. This is, once again, going to make life difficult and more expensive for a whole lot of people around the country. Add that to the one big beautiful bill, add that to things that have been cut in DOGE, and it creates a country contrary to the one that Donald Trump ran on that was going to be more affordable.
That's right. It fuels the affordability crisis. It makes things more expensive. I was just with some constituents yesterday, and they're complaining about of course, the price of everything remaining high, from groceries to housing and everything in between. And this is, as you know, why people supposedly elected Donald Trump, to deal with this underlying problem. But it's gotten worse. And inflation appears to be rising. And so we're kind of in this situation where small businesses are complaining because of the tariff chaos. They're not hiring, they're not investing. And now I'm talking to a lot of people who are getting laid off. And so given all of this and the fact that, unfortunately, legislation and legislative business has come to a standstill in Washington, D.C. because of the Epstein files, people are just throwing up their hands and saying, what the heck is going on with Donald Trump? Release the files and get on with the business of the country, which is tackling our economic problems right now.
Jim, put your old chief White House correspondent hat back on. Let's say you're on this tour with the president. You had limited opportunities to ask him questions. To the congressman's point, what many Americans are concerned about right now, who weren't concerned all that much about the Epstein files, are now wondering what's going on with all the distractions we've seen in the last week about Barack Obama and the Washington Commanders and a lady catching a snake. What's going on here? What's the question What's the question that a guy like you would ask the president if you could right now to answer to try and move this ball forward?
Yeah, I mean, Ali, I think the big question right now is whether Donald Trump is going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, keep in mind, I mean, this QAnon movement that Trump was, riding the wave of during the last several years of being in and out of office, it was centered around this idea, this conspiracy theory that there was this cabal, this satanic cabal of Democratic politicians who were running a child sex ring. And here's Donald Trump sending his fixer, Todd Blanche, down to Florida to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, reportedly offering her limited immunity. And the question becomes, in the coming days, is he going to pardon her in exchange for some sort of favorable testimony or testimonial on her part that says, oh, Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong. I don't know. What's this Epstein files thing? She could come out and say that sort of thing. And so I think the big question that I would ask if I were on this foreign trip with him right now is, would you pledge to the American people that you would not pardon Ghislaine Maxwell? Because I think, to me, as soon as he does that, it's going to stink to high heaven. And it's going to send the message, not just to Democrats, but to Republicans, and in particular, people in the MAGA base, that Donald Trump has something to hide. And, he's been hoisted on his own QAnon petard, it seems to me. And I think there's a real danger to his presidency. I think if he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm not sure he's, I think he's craftier than perhaps we realize sometimes. He may not do this right away. He could do it, before the holidays or something like that. Tell Maxwell, we need you to cool your heels for a few months here. But if he does that, I think he's going to be regarded pretty, by and large, on a by and large basis, as kind of a lame duck president and somebody who has seriously damaged goods. Because to me, for all intents and purposes, his presidency is kind of over if he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell, because he will do serious damage to, one of the big reasons why he has this potent political base as it stands right now. They've been buying this Epstein files thing for quite some period of time now. And if he gives in and pardons her, what does that say about him? What does that say about his presidency? What does that say about his political base? Are they going to buy this? I'm just not so sure. I think he's in some real political danger here, Ali.
Yeah, there's always, pardoning or commuting sentences is always a hot topic, but when it comes to a convicted sex trafficker, that's a whole different department of trouble. Congressman, let me ask you about Ghislaine Maxwell, because most lawyers have told me there's no valid reason why Todd Blanche should have been talking to her, no legal reason why Todd Blanche should be talking to her. Todd Blanche is Donald Trump's lawyer. I say is because we keep discussing this. I really want to keep pointing this out on this show. You're never not somebody's lawyer. Yeah. Your legal obligation to them never ends. So could have sent someone else. There are a lot of people who work for the Department of Justice who could have gone and talked to Ghislaine Maxwell if there was a real reason to do so. I am asking you, Congressman, because Congress has also subpoenaed Ghislaine Maxwell. What would you hope to get out of that conversation?
Well, first of all, I want to just echo what was said before about the pardon power. I think it would be viewed as a tremendous cover-up. And, a lot of my Republican colleagues in private basically are having like a WTF moment right now. They don't understand how Donald Trump could have been so affiliated with perhaps the biggest pedophile of modern history, and why he wants to prevent the release of information related to Epstein at this point. And it just begs the question, does it implicate him somehow? Now, with regard to Ghislaine Maxwell, first of all, I agree with you about Todd Blanche. I don't see why he spent 2 days with her, except potentially to offer inducements or potentially threats with regard to her potential testimony. And what we would ask her, if we have the chance, is what is in those files? What is it that we should be looking for that might be related to Donald Trump or anyone else? Of course, in my humble opinion, we should only depose her after we have the documents, because we can't trust anything that she says on face value. It has to be corroborated by documents, by other evidence before we were to believe it. However, I do think that she probably has more insights to offer. I'm just concerned about, obviously, her credibility at this point.
I want to ask you both to stick around for a second. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more Velshi on the other side. Stay with us.